All right, boom, we're back. Squeeze the Neck podcast, and I was going to say north today. We're more than north. We're in Scotland. We've crossed the border with, again, I normally say my new mate, but my new coach this time, Frank Gilfeather. Thanks for doing this, Frank.
Good to see you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, because firstly, just for context, I just done a session with you during a Krav Maga workshop that you was teaching Krav Maga as your boxing technique. We're having a little break to have a chat, and then we're going to jump into the next one, which is for Amateur Boxing Club, I think. So
yes,
we're
that's true. Here in Greenock.
Greenock, that's what I was going to ask you. Very good. Greenock, so we're I think half hour outside Glasgow, something like that?
Yes, about that. And of course, Greenock was a very famous port, and where all the ocean-going liners used to stop. They come up from Liverpool, stop here, and then they would go to America and Canada.
Is that right?
So it was once a very important part of Scottish history.
Very good. I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of it before. When someone said Greenock, I was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. But as I say, thank you very much for having me. Welcome. Fantastic session. I've been lucky enough lately to go to lots of different sort of seminars with great coaches of different arts and whatnot. I don't know, there must be something in the air, because I keep getting good ones, and I wouldn't say it if I didn't. So that one was fantastic, very much about learning and stuff, which we'll come to in a sec. But for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know where you've been for the last year or whatever, you're a bit of an Instagram sensation, aren't you?
Yeah.
But before all that, tell us who you are and where you come from and with the boxing.
Well, my name is Frank Gilfeather, and I'm 79, and I came back into boxing in my late 50s in terms of training. I would train religiously 3 times a week in my 60s and so on. And then 2 years ago, we discovered social media, really, and let's do something, put something on TikTok, an instructional thing, which went through the roof in terms of followers, and then Instagram, and now more recently, YouTube. And it's been phenomenal. And actually, a piece of news for you today, Ollie, is today we reached 1 million followers / subscribers across those 3 channels.
Wow.
And it's phenomenal. And you know the thing I love about it? I love the engagement, and I love the way that people come on and say, I did this and I made a mistake, how do I rectify it? Or I was boxing last week, I won on points, but I thought the other guy maybe should have got it. And people are talking about their own boxing experiences. But on top of that, Ollie, I have a message which is really out there to kind of people of my age, and basically people in their 30s, 40s, 50s and beyond, to say never give up on yourself. Because, so many people sit on the sofa in front of, daytime TV or they never get off the sofa, and they're thinking, well, how can I exercise? But you can. Walk. Open the door, walk for half an hour, turn around, come back, you've done an hour of walking. That's exercise. So all these little things are important if you want to prolong your life. That's my view. Never give up on yourself.
Brilliant. And you're approaching 80, right? You're coming up on 80. And like most people your age, I mean, let's just be honest, they're sort of, they're old men, aren't they? They're frail and they can't do a lot for themselves, whereas, or women, obviously. But like you come in here, you talk 2 hours, you don't even look like you broke a sweat, you know what I mean? You're sharp as a bell, you're hitting the bag, full force, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I think a lot of what you talked today as well, and I won't speak for you, but a lot of it was like, keep things simple, right? With the punches you were teaching us, the way to move, the way to do this, the way to do that, the target we're going for, etc. And I think it's the same with exercise, and keep going, isn't it?
Well, you're right. And I think what I see on social media, for example, are too many so-called boxing coaches who are, they're introducing complicated drills. Yeah. All the stuff you see with the footwork and hoops and ladders and all that stuff, that's fine for fitness. I'm not interested in that. I expect a boxer to take care of his own fitness. What I am interested in is technique and skill and the thought process of boxing. Now, in my view, not enough boxers think about what they're doing. They go on there in the ring, and when the bell rings for round 1, they become robots. And they're not really thinking about how they can use their skill and their technique to outclass and outpoint their opponent. So I would love to see a regurgitation of that side of boxing.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, with boxing, it's obviously a very complex sport, isn't it? Like, I've boxed, you've obviously got vast experience, which we'll come to in a minute, but like, people do sort of overcomplicate things at times, don't you? Like you touched on it during the training today. You see people on the bag pit pat here, throw a million punch combinations.
Yeah.
There's no plan to it. Whereas what you're teaching, again, is like very direct. And you spoke a lot about hurtful punches, not just like for the sake of throwing it for no reason.
Well, you're right in one thing. Don't overcomplicate things. Boxing shouldn't be complex, right? You shouldn't be packing your mind with too much, certainly in the early stages. It's like every discipline. You will gain experience as you go. You will gain experience from your victories and from your defeats, probably more from your defeats. There's nothing wrong with being beaten, as long as you've learned something and you do not repeat the mistakes you've made in that one. So don't overcomplicate things. Don't go into the gym and, you know, think you're Manny Pacquiao or Canelo or one of these guys. Go in and think about the simple things. And you're right about the power. I'm often told by people who comment on my social media, saying, well, is there timing is more important than speed? And I thought, well, that's pretty obvious. It's not more important. Speed is more important. If you've got speed and power, those two things, you know, obviously you're looking for precision. You want to be able to hit the chin, but if you've got the speed and the power to do that and do it with real venom, you will rock your opponent right to the soles of his feet, and that's what you want to do. Why are you going into a boxing ring if you don't want to hurt the guy?
Yeah.
So hurt the guy by all means, but do it with simplicity. Do it with good thinking, counter-punching, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Leading people on a shot, she was showing us like how to move and all that kind of stuff. And important is the speed too, isn't it? Because like, for anyone who's ever been in there, you'd know like speed's the one that worries you, isn't it?
Yeah.
If someone's got a big punch, but you know, and it's not coming that far, you can deal with that to an extent, can't you? Whereas if someone's fast and they're whoa, it's very difficult to deal with, isn't it?
If he's fast and he's not kind of like a kangaroo boxing and that kind of stuff. If he's fast and precise, and the power is there, it's really difficult. You know, even with I mentioned today, even with the jab, I can never understand these guys that are throwing jabs with absolutely zero power behind it.
Yeah.
They're throwing jabs and they're feeling their way, and I would, why? Just if you're going to throw a jab, make sure that you're sending a statement to your opponent. This is my jab. Look at this, right in your face. Did that hurt you? Yeah. Well, you're going to get another one. Bang, bang. And things like that. So, you know, these are the things that come into your mind. You don't throw a jab and then dance away. You've landed it right in his chin or on his nose, and then you dance away. You then take advantage. I've found the target.
Yeah.
I know where it is. I could close my eyes now and find that target because it's now on my radar. Things like that.
Yeah, and when you're showing them things about just certain ways, again, I won't give away secrets, obviously sign up to one of his seminars because I really recommend them, but the little simple things, the little adjustments you gave for the jab, again, they're not rocket science, but people don't think about them. The right hand especially, there was a little diamond in there with the right hand that you showed us.
Well, the right hand, see, that's got me into trouble with lots of people because the modern boxers now I'm not talking about top level boxers, I'm talking about the run-of-the-mill boxers, many of whom are learning from social media. They're throwing basically right jabs. They're not throwing the cross. And, you know, recently I've had guys saying, well, what you're doing isn't the cross. And I need to get across the point, Ollie. The cross was named because it's going across, right? It's not going, that's a jab.
Yep.
That's a jab. You know, they're both jabs. And that's how people are throwing their cross now, as a jab. Now, if I say to you, does the guy in front of you have two heads all of a sudden? Jab there and jab there. No, he's got one chin and that's the target. That's the one you want to hit. So that's why you cross over, and it's short and powerful. It comes from the hips, right up the shoulder, and the punch travels this distance. I can recommend everybody to watch Rocky Marciano winning the world heavyweight title mid to late 50s against Jersey Joe Walcott. And the punch, the cross, which he knocked Walcott out with, he called the Susie Q. That's what he called it. And it only travels, you know, a foot at the end. And poor Jersey Joe doesn't know what day it is. So these things are important to me. but they seem to have been lost somewhere along the way. And you see professional boxers now at the top level, they don't throw the cross with a straight arm, and they throw it with real venom, and they know that they're going to hurt the guy in front of them.
Yeah, and I think it's important, especially that was a great example with Rocky Marciano and Jersey Joe Walcott, because for anyone who hasn't, he was losing that fight as well, wasn't he? And if you ever watch it, he's looking for that. He's looking because he trusts himself enough to know, hey, if that lands, this is what we came for. And then they rematched actually, and he won by first round knockout, didn't he? So I mean, there's gold in what Frank's saying.
Well, you see, take Marciano for example. Marciano many people would regard him as, he's just a brawler, he's just a bruiser. Yeah, he was. But he had a brain.
Yeah.
Now, he was short for a heavyweight, even in those days, 5'10". And he knew, and he had short arms. His arms were extraordinarily short.
Yeah.
And he knew that he couldn't stand off and box because he would be beaten. So he knew the one thing he had to do was get close. And he took a lot of punishment as a result of that. But he was so confident, and he was rock hard, that he was the one. He's the kind of guy that if you were boxing him, you would stop and say, okay, please give me a break, because it's relentless and it's too much. So Marciano had a brain, and what he did was interesting. When he was against the taller guys, he was short, he went shorter. Right, now if you go shorter with a tall guy, a really tall guy, he then has a problem. Where is he? He's got to punch down. Now you tell me somebody who punches down has power. No, the straight or the uppercut or the hook, everything on that level. When he has to punch down to somebody, he can't connect. And Marciano is inside that jab, and he's doing real damage. So he had a brain, just like Roberto Duran, similar type fighter. Canelo, similar. Canelo's head movement is fantastic, so he doesn't take the punches. Just look at his face. He doesn't take punches. He's letting them go past.
Turned pro at 15 as well, which is insane, isn't it? If you think about it, a 15-year-old boy turning pro, Canelo.
I know.
Which is, imagine a 15-year-old boy in here now, sparring. You wouldn't even let him spar with a grown man, really, for most part, would you?
No, Carl Froch was an animal.
Yep.
I mean, Carl Froch could go out there, and he was kind of unorthodox in his style. I mean, his hands were down here and all that, but what a puncher.
Yeah.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. I was actually lucky enough to be there for his last ever punch when he knocked out poor Georgie
goodness.
Groves. Sorry, George. Great fight, obviously, at Wembley. But let's go back a little bit, mate. Let's talk about your experience, because I've heard you say on social media you had yourself over 200 fights back in the day.
Yeah, amateur fights, and I did that, and people say, especially the kids today, saying, come on, 200, how can you possibly have 200 fights? Of course, they're not getting the matches today that we got. We were boxing every other week, right, somewhere in our region. And then as you got better, you became a national champion, you were boxing, and I boxed twice in the Albert Hall against England. And it was a marvellous experience. I boxed abroad, Bulgaria, Italy, Denmark a couple of times. But on top of that, when you were boxing in district championships, right throughout the youths and the seniors, if you were reaching the final, and I always reached the final, I usually won them, that was your third fight in the night.
Yeah, right.
So you're boxing 3 fights in the one night, and you're exhausted. You mean, obviously there are bouts in between, there are other weight divisions, like maybe 1 or 2 other weight divisions in between you. But it doesn't always work out, because if there's a couple of early stoppages in those fights, you're back in the ring within half an hour or 45 minutes.
Right.
So that's why I had 200 fights.
Yeah. And what age did you start boxing at?
I started boxing, well, my first kind of, what they call a skills contest now, an exhibition contest, was age 7. But I was I was going along at my dad's gym when I was 4. So I was soaking up all this atmosphere and the sweatiness and what was the stuff that they used to rub on? They used to rub olive oil. You get a massage with olive oil. Yeah.
Is that what you do to you?
That's what they olive oil. Nobody used olive oil in those days for cooking.
No.
And when that started, olive oil, we should get a massage with olive oil. And it's all these kind of primitive things. people, and it is an interesting thing. One of my early trainers was a guy called Harry McLean, and he was an old booth fighter, right? He would go at the fairgrounds and he'd take on all comers.
Just bare knuckle type stuff.
No, it wasn't bare knuckle. It was
with the
boxing
gloves.
gloves. So what they would do is you would get all the kind of farm workers coming in and had a couple of pints, and they're in the crowd, and the MC's got the boxers on the platform. He's saying, yeah, we've got this guy, and we've got Benny Lynch, who became a world champion, started in the booth. We've got this guy, we'll give you, you'll win 10 shillings if you can beat this guy. And then they would kid on, they were allowing the guy to win, and then they would chin him. Harry McLean was one of my first coaches. Harry taught me something that everybody's talking about these days. The Philly shell. Right?
Okay, even back then.
Even back then. Yeah. So people are saying, aha, but Mayweather invented it. He didn't. Believe me, he didn't. Harry used to, and we didn't take him up on this. Harry used to say, this, walk with the shoulder and back like this. And we'd go, nah, that looks ridiculous. Because you were a kid and you never really listened to him, And then, lo and behold, of course, it's something that's almost unique to Mayweather. You don't see many fighters using the Philly shell. You see a few, but not many.
Not many well, anyway, right?
No,
a lot of people try it.
Harry McLean showed me it when I was 11, 12 years old.
Really? That's mad. But was it quite a rare thing? Like, because in Scotland at the time, I'm assuming not many people was using the Philly shell, right?
Nobody was using it.
That's what I mean, yeah.
But Harry had used it in the boxing booths and the fairgrounds.
And it was working there as well.
It was working, yeah. So, people had the different styles. And that's a great thing about boxing. Allow people to adapt, to find their own style. Sometimes the style finds you, and you're feeling, and I do little things. I don't want to radically change people, their style, but I can make little tweaks. I could see, that foot should be over there a bit, or it should be behind you a bit more, or maybe if you turn, we did that earlier today. Yeah. If you're a square-on fighter, thank you very much, you're easy to hit. If you show me half the target by going side on, that allows me to take the back foot round, and I can be square on again if I want to fight.
Yeah.
And I'm back again as a boxer. All these little tricks.
Yeah.
What I learned since. So at 4-year-old, I was in that gym watching people, listening, probably taking it in, but not aware of it.
But do you know what? I think there's a magic to that, and I think, and you tell me what you think. I do think that, especially kids, but obviously adults fall under the same if they're getting it too. I think people can be overcoached in a way. Like you just said there, you got to find your own style a little bit. Like certain places you'll go to, they'll teach you one way. They'll teach a guy who's a little short, stocky fella the same as they'll teach a big, long, rangy bloke, because this is the way to do it type thing. Whereas like we've all been around people in gyms that have just got it. And they ain't been taught that. They can just move a certain way, they can punch a certain way. And sometimes you just got to kind of go, leave them to it and let them figure it out.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I think you're right. And it's, of course, that applies to other sports. Yeah. Football, for example. You've got these coaches who went through a period of many, many years where they were rigidly telling kids, they were actually driving the genius and the talent out of some kids, especially those that were good at dribbling. And it's the same with boxing. And you could spot a natural. You go into the gym and you watch for 5 minutes, people on the bag, shadow box, and he's got it. Yeah. You know they've got it. So the message is simple. Just make the little tweaks. The coach is not there to make huge differences. Mm-hmm. He's there. Well, sometimes he has to make huge differences, but in the main, he said, well, if you did that instead of this, you might find it advantageous. Mm-hmm. And when they do it, they think, oh, I know. I'll give you an example. I'm big on the backhand being here. Yep. And I call it my sliding door. I could stop the cross coming, I could stop the jab, and I could go up here to stop the hook. I used to watch a kid in the gym I trained at and subsequently did a bit coaching. And we did all that. And then when he got older, he moved on to another. And I was just a guy who came up and trained, and they said to me, would you take the kids, And he moved on to this guy, and this guy was the dad of one of the young boxers. He had no experience in boxing. He had absolutely zero experience. So the next time I'm watching, his son, this guy's son, who's 17, is punching the head off this guy who's now about 15. And I looked at the guy, and the guy's like this, right? And I watched it, and when the round ended, I said, come here. You're getting jabbed right through the middle. You do realize that you can stop those jabs. And he actually didn't know how. I said, remember, go back a year, remember what I told you? Here. You'll never get through. But they don't want to do it because they think it's old-fashioned.
Right.
And I said, what would you rather have? Old-fashioned or a broken nose or a sore jaw or a swollen eye? What would you rather have? So the defensive element of boxing is the number one priority of every coach. And if you don't teach defense right at the start, then shame on you.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what you said. But also, one thing that came to mind when you were saying that is during that you was teaching us about where to hold your hands, and how like it punches from the shoulders, and how like people do too much up high and you can't punch from up here, and it should come direct and things like that.
You're right.
And again, it's just one of them nuggets that's so simple. And I think most people, not most people, but some people would naturally do that, and they have it coached out of them type thing, don't they? You know what I mean? And with coaches nowadays, I know it's not that I'm knocking coaches by any means, but like there are a lot of sort of fitness trainers that pick up pads now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And of course I got pro fights even in Scotland. I'm thinking, guys come out, and the first thing they do is this. And I'm thinking, right, okay, you don't want to fight. You're in there to go the distance. You're in there not to take punishment. Why are you in there? Right? And they're like this, and they're trying to get close, and they're throwing, feeble punches, meaningless punches. And I was thinking, this isn't boxing. I think now I'm not one of these old guys. I don't want people to say, he's an old guy who thinks things were better in his day. But the fact of the matter is this: the pro fighters who boxed in my day and the amateurs had acres of contest. And nowadays you've seen guys, they're winning a title. Well, many fights I had 12. Oh, really? Yeah. Where's the experience come from? So we're losing all that. I think once we get people up to speed at a certain level, get them sparring, get them in the ring, make sure, this is for coaches, especially coaches who don't know anything about boxing, and there are many, make sure these kids are not punished, are not hit hard. Make sure they know how to defend themselves. It's an eye-opener for kids when you say, let me try and jab you, put your hand there, bang, bang. I was with an East European boxer the other day. Well, he's into kind of everything, Muay Thai and kickboxing and all that, but he does the boxing. And he's boxing with, and I said, try and jab me. And this guy was a powerhouse. He could thump, And he's going back. He said, I can't get through. I said, no, you can't get through because I've got that there. I don't care how big and how heavy you are. I'll stop you. And I said, I'll do it to you. And he did it. And he thought that was a light bulb moment for him. Don't take punishment.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And because where it's so simple, it's something you can learn and take on your journey with you, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's not like, again, a lot of gyms you'll go in sometimes and they'll put you through almost like a circuit, right? They'll beat you up and train, hit the bag a million times, blah, blah, blah. Great session, see you later.
Yeah.
What'd you learn there?
That's right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You come in here today and like a lot of it, we got a sweat on at the end and you beat us up a little bit to finish us off. But like at the start, it was very kind of mentally taxing more, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like very kind of like do this, do that, it's little subtle adjustment, and it was like really good. And one thing that stuck in my mind that you said about gloves too, because which all comes back round to the way people train, I guess, right? And how they train wrong or right or certain aspects, etc. But the gloves, you talk about your gloves, a noble art, right? You've got like well, you tell me, the thumb's not stuck down.
Well, we were brought up in boxing with the old bag mitts, right? Which now, if you look back, videos and pictures of training, Joe Louis, Sugar, the greats all wore them, right up until, I don't know, up until the 80s or 90s, or even, no, beyond that. And suddenly, sparring gloves appeared in the gym, and they look fabulous. They're all different colours, and the kids are enamoured with them, and they're saying, "Wow, these are great," But what I find is, so I got a glove company sent me 3 pairs, and beautiful. I thought, right, have them, okay, I'll try them. put my hand in. First thing, I couldn't close my hand, right? So it's open. That spells danger, because we were always taught as kids. Now I'm talking about 7, 8, 9-year-old. We're taught if you hit somebody with an open hand, and especially if he puts his head down and you hit him on the head, you're in trouble. You've broken a knuckle or you've damaged your hand in some way. If you have your thumb out like this and you hit somebody on the head, you will stave your thumb. Now staving, I don't know if you've ever had it, staving, the bruising is hellish, and it could last a couple of weeks, which is why that happens, right? You clench your fist. Why? You protect the thumb behind the fist, and you punch with the knuckle part of the glove. Now I see them. The gloves are, and it's amazing, some people, even today, didn't realize that their sparring gloves were attached to the part of the glove with a little piece of elastic. So when I say clench your fist, they're going, ugh, can't get that over. Who designed these? I would love to know. I would love to meet the person who designed them and say, have you ever boxed? And I know what the answer is going to be.
No, sir.
Because you need to do that. Imagine some of the great fighters me saying, by the way, this is what you're wearing in your next fight. They'd go, what? So it doesn't lend itself well to punching properly. And the other thing I find, especially with the youngsters, is they're punching with the inside of the glove, which we call slapping.
Yeah.
Right? And that means that their fingers at the end. I asked the question today. Now, how many people were there? 15, 20 people?
At least.
And
yeah.
I said, how many of you can clench a fist inside that sparring glove? And virtually everybody put their hand up. They can't.
Yeah.
They can't. How many of you have hurt? How many of you punch with the bottom part of the glove, the knuckle, slapping? And they all put their hands up. So I'm saying to the guy, come and meet me. If you designed those gloves, come and meet me and give me one good reason why you did that.
Yeah, right. And tell us about your gloves, because your gloves are thumbless. You said you took like an old mitt and put padding on it.
My gloves are the kind of 21st century version of the old style bag.
And sorry, not to interrupt, but with the gloves back in the day, did you used to have different gloves? I'm taking it for hitting the bag, and different gloves that you used to spar.
So the bag mitt was strictly for the bag.
That was what you hit, and that was it.
That's all we hit it with. We weren't allowed. The sparring gloves were locked away, and then when the time of the training session came to spar, they were taken out, and you got to wear sparring gloves. And I've got to say that the sparring gloves in my day were 14 ounce and 16 ounce.
Right.
And the 16 ounces were like huge cushions.
Right.
They were massive. Well, we didn't wear them because we were kids. We wore the 40, but even the 14 ounce for us. So what I did was I kept on the Noble Art bag mitt. I kept the original thumb, which is not padded, and it means that you can wrap it round like this. And actually, I might ask Paul to throw me one of those bag mitts, Paul. He can wrap your, but what we said was, okay, what if we made them 21st century bag mitts and gave it padding? So we did 8 ounce padding, and I'll let you see them now. Thank you. So that's them. They're 8 ounce padding, right? And they're brilliant to wear. I'll let you try them, but this is the key.
Right.
This is what
completely separate in your thumb. You can can actually
Yeah. So there's none of this kind of thumb attached to the glove with a piece of elastic, and it means that you're punching this way.
Yeah.
It means you put them on, Ollie. Put that one on, and see how you can wrap your thumb right round. Push it right.
Oh, you can, already, because it doesn't have the fat thumb either.
Yeah.
Like the padding's not round the thumb, so I can
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to punch
wrap
out
it
with
right
that as well,
round. Yeah, and you punch. Now, what I say to people is, if you go to the boxing gym and you don't compete, you don't need sparring gloves.
Right, because you're not sparring anyway.
You're not sparring. So you need bag gloves. You need the mitts, So forget the sparring gloves, because they will do you absolutely. If anything, you'll hurt your hands.
Yeah.
Give it a miss.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've walked in a boxing gym for the first time, probably coming up 20 years ago now. And it was 100%, there was none of this bag gloves, sparring gloves
So
stuff.
did you wear bag mitts?
No, we use. Well, I say that we had different gloves for bags, and we had to wear their gloves for sparring.
But
they were the same.
But they weren't attached.
No, they were. No, they were. In my day, they were definitely. But they was just basically the same. So like,
I'm trying to find out when they actually came.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. So like, but you'd go in there, and it was a bit like that actually. They'd have sparring gloves in a certain box. You'd have to put them on and then put them back, so they weren't roughed up on the bags or anything like that. But they was essentially the same. There was no sort of spare thumb or anything like that.
I just when I tried those sparring gloves that were sent to me, I went, this is strange. But I suppose it's strange for anybody when it's new, it's different, you know. But I needed to get back.
They are definitely different. I'm definitely going to get a pair of them to try on the bags because they.
You'll love it because you can wrap your.
And you could, even just there, just sitting here now with the clenched fist, it makes a difference, doesn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's what I tell people. It will enhance your experience in the gym. And you'll think, well, I enjoyed that more than hitting sparring gloves, you know, because you've got sparring gloves the way they are. Of course, you try to hit with the knuckle part. It's kind of more difficult than it would be with those.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. That's it, because I've been hitting a bag recently a lot with MMA gloves. Just because the feeling of it, I prefer to a boxing glove.
Same principle.
Exactly, and that's probably why, without consciously realising it, that's probably the reason why I enjoy it more. But just going back a step to your career and stuff, like you was winning national titles, you was boxing all over the place for Scotland and whatnot. Why did you never turn pro and go in that direction yourself?
Well, it was simple. I remember, so there was two people who were trying to get me to turn pro at one time. One of whom was a man called Joe Gans, who was the father of Walter McGowan, who became the flyweight champion of the world.
Okay.
And he had great fights with Alan Rudkin from Liverpool, you know, at bantamweight, when they were both at bantamweight. And Walter, I was Walter's chief sparring partner from the age of 15. His dad was his manager, stroke, father, coach, everything. And he was kind of nurturing me. I was through at Walter, staying for a week. I would go for weekends for the sparring, because he said to my coach, Frank's the only guy that can make Walter think. And that was fine. And I enjoyed it because it was a battle of wits. And in those days, every sparring session was full on. Right, so if you look back the videos, for example, of guys like Roberto Duran sparring and so on, it's for real, right? It's a fight, it's a battle, and that's the way it was in my day. And then I started sparring with other professional boxers, much against the wishes of Joe Gans, McGowan's father. Because he was the guy that was bringing me through, and then you know, you see me sparring with Bobby Fischer, who was a featherweight contender for the British title, Johnny Morrissey, people like that. And he would go, hang on a second, you're for Walter. He was trying to get me to turn pro. He won the world title in the 1960s, can't remember for sure, 1964-ish. And he said to me, I'll tell you a good story about that. He said to me, I'm boxing next Thursday in Paisley Ice Rink, 5,000 people. Come down on Sunday for the final sparring. And I said, okay. And he said, don't come to the gym, come to St. Cuthbert's Church Hall in Hamilton, just outside Glasgow. And I wonder why. So we went there, and the church hall was like this, actually, virtually the same size. There was a full-size ring, there were punch bags, everything we needed. I thought and there were people along the walls. I thought it was great. So anyway, I'm 18, 1964, and I'm putting my wraps on, except we used to call them bandages, because that's what they were. And I'm putting them all, and the door opens to my left. And I looked around like this. Sugar Ray Robinson.
Whoa, Robinson, whoa.
Oh, my heart stopped, you know, it was like an Elvis fan meeting Elvis or something like that, you know. And he walked in and I thought, of course, he's top of the bill on Thursday. But I didn't expect him to be training here in the St. Cuthbert's Church Hall. And he came over and he chatted for a couple of minutes, and then he said, well, let's go training. And we went, and he's punching the bag next to me, and I can't keep my eye off him. He was a master. He was beautiful as an athlete and as a boxer. Greatest pound for pound of all time, in the opinion of many people, including me. So that was that. McGowan wins the world title. I go to a dinner that's staged for him, and Peter Keenan, who was the lead promoter in Scotland, who was in with the cartel at the time in London, Harry Levine, Jarvis Astaire, Mickey Duff, Mike Barrett. And he said to me, right, Frank, he said, it was no question. He said, I was 19, I'd just come back from East Berlin, the European Championships. He said, you'll go to London, Al Phillips will be your manager, you'll box for Levine and Barrett and the others down in London, and up in Scotland you'll box for me. He said, so what do you think of that? I said, not a lot. I'm sitting at a table with a lot of really champion boxers, you know, of the era. And I said, Peter Keenan, I said, I look at them and I look at you and I think, who's wearing the mohair suit, smoking the Havana cigar, drinking the Napoleon brandy? It's you. I said, so I know where the money goes, and these guys are all kind of scrimping for a drink or whatever. And that was the end of it.
Really? Yeah, that's funny. Do you ever look back and think you wish you'd had a go at it?
Oh, no.
No, you don't?
No, I don't.
No, that's interesting.
It doesn't interest me. And I watch pro boxing and I think, oh, even today, you know, it's brutal. It's brutal.
And for you to be so, you said you was like 18, 19, to have that kind of head at the time.
That was it.
Because most people would have just gone, oh, okay, and signed, wouldn't they?
No. And I thought, but then from the age of 15, I had made up my mind I was going to be a pro. I was getting to 17, I was sparring every other weekend with McGowan and all the other guys. And then it wore off.
Really?
So by the time I'm 19, I thought, do I really want to be that? You know, do I want to, you know?
That's it. Was you physically ready at that age? Was you like a young man at that age, or was you still a boy?
What?
When you're 18, 19, it's 19, a funny age, isn't it? Because some people are men at that age physically, some are
19.
Still... Yeah, but was you sort of ready to turn pro physically, did you feel?
No, probably not. That's a good, I've never asked myself that question.
Because 19's a funny age, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like some people are physically a man and some are still boys.
Yeah, and I was going across at that time. I was boxing. Well, I went to Bulgaria to box, and East Europeans, who were all, they won all the medals at the Olympics and Europeans and so on. And you're boxing guys, and you're looking at them and thinking, he can't be my opponent. He's a man.
Right.
You know, I remember doing that in Bulgaria, and we're parading, you know, Scots team here, Bulgarian team there, and I'm looking. And I thought, that's not my opponent. This guy was beautiful body, toned, 5'10", lightweight, you know. And I thought, that's not my. I'm looking up the line and I'm shouting to the light middleweight, Tom Emery, and the welterweight, Andy Peace, and I'm saying, guys, I think that's your guy. I'm going, you must be up. And he knew my name, and he said, no. He said, Gilfeather. I said, yes. He said, I'm boxing you. My heart sank.
Yeah, well, it's funny. There might have been some special supplements going on the old Eastern Bloc back in them days, right? They weren't shy to a chemist or whatever.
No, you're right.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
But like going forward, man, obviously, like you've got a massive following. And it's not just a massive following because it's not gimmicky. Like as I say, you come here today for your seminar and whatnot, and it is like top notch. So like, what's the future for you? Is that what you want to do? You want to push this message out there, get your stuff going, and get these gloves out?
Get the gloves going. I want people to learn how to punch pro. I want them to enjoy their experience in the gym. You know, so if you're not a boxer and you don't have to wear sparring, even if you are a boxer, you don't have to wear sparring gloves on the back. Get the mitts. So that's one part of that. That's only one element. But we've got, of course, the coaching. I like the seminars, and I like trying to reach my audience on social media channels to do the simple thing. You know, it's not complicated. It shouldn't be complicated. What you do is the bit that you think is complicated next week and the week after won't be complicated if you keep practicing it. It becomes part of your intuition, part of your DNA, and so that's one aspect. But the other thing is, I like telling historical stuff about boxing. Lots of people kind of tune in for that and think, well, I can't believe that happened. And the other thing is, never give up on yourself. I want people of all ages to remember they are not incapable of doing something meaningful. Could be a walk, could be a swim, could be a little jog, it could be anything simple. Or if they want, they could go right into the gym and do this stuff here, there. It's great fun.
Boom. Well, thank you very much, Frank. This has been brilliant. You've got a great energy about you, and I'm looking forward to doing another seminar with you in about 5 minutes' time. Thanks to Paul, your son, for setting this up for us, mate. But one question before we finish, I always ask, important question. Which football team do you support?
Celtic.
Celtic, wrong answer, never mind. Thank you very much. Cheers, mate, top man. I always finish with a fist up like this, Frank.
I've just frozen out all the other.
You've lost half the city.
So I've been outed. See what he does?
There you go. That's what we do here. Chelsea's the correct answer, but we'll come to that next time. Hold your fist up like this for me, Frank. We always finish with a fist up, fist up, fist up. Join me. Squeeze the neck. Boom, boom.